the overview from yesterday that I just wanted to comment on. We did an exploration of tools and products. And the key themes that I saw come out of the sessions that I attended and then actually talking to other people about them had to do with looking at data management, data collection, and working at data collection with locals. What does that mean? Who are the people that we're interacting with and how are we going about collecting this data? It's something for us to be very sensitive about and to think about who our populations are that we're interfacing with. We also discussed the need for interoperability, for standards across our different data collection techniques and visualization. And I would suggest that, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, that visualization seems to be trumping analysis. Or is visualization changing how we do analysis? And are we coming out with different analytical products that we need to think about what that means? So that's just something to, I think, keep in mind. Something I was struck by yesterday was the lack of utilization of raster data. What's happening to raster data in these different venues? We can stream raster data, we can use it as a backdrop, we can use it in numerous ways, but are we using it as a part of our analytical processes? And really thinking about that and what needs to happen if we're going to use that, because there's a huge amount of data that are in that type of format. Yesterday I broke things down in terms of process, practice, and products. And I think products are driving more how we do things than carefully thinking about the processes that we use and the backdrop in terms of the context and how we do these activities. And I think we need to just take a moment to reflect and check on how we are approaching these issues, how we're working with different people and parties, and think about the role of things that have to do with culture, with language, with approaches that may not be part of the dominant paradigm, that may be a different perspective on how we approach issues, and how do we be inclusive of other populations and other points of view as we are really embedded in this technological environment that makes us think in a very particular sort of way. As I tell my students, at the end of the day, when we work with computers, we agree to reduce everything to zeros and ones. And when that happens, what happens to us? What happens to people? What happens to culture, what happens to perspectives. And I think there was some ideas put forward by the keynote yesterday to have us how we might think about those things. So with that in mind, I just wanted to give a brief overview of our secondary cities project. So, what is that? Oh, this is my, okay. Is that you or me? Okay, so Secondary Cities is our project where we're mapping for resiliency and emergency preparedness. And if we click on goal number 11 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we see that one of their key goals is to make cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. That's really the driver for our particular project. And when we look at this project, we are coming out of the Humanitarian Information Unit at the Department of State to be able to look at under-mapped, underrepresented areas around the world. And one of the key pieces of this is looking at partnerships and how we can partner with a whole suite of different entities, whether they're universities on site, whether there are regional governments, looking at national governments, industry partnerships we can do, all the different parties that we can have relationships with. We also are looking at a particular type of geospatial data. And so I was really struck by our conversation about data yesterday, because we're really looking at these 13 themes of human geography data, which are not mapping infrastructure, but are trying to drill down to collect data that is not easily accessed. It's a different type of data. And so how do we go about using some of the methodologies we talked yesterday about to collect these kinds of information? Some seem pretty straightforward and some not so much. So right now we have a number of secondary cities projects that we've launched. We have one going in Cuzco, where we're looking at urban flows and emergency preparedness. Kirsten Miller from EcoCity Builders will talk more about that later on today. And as well as Medellin, Colombia, that are also looking at urban flows. Pokhara, Nepal is the other place we're looking at, that we've started a project where we're looking at disaster management and emergency preparedness. Kharkiv, Ukraine, where we are looking at urban safety and emergency preparedness as well. And Esri, Courtney, and Tiffany gave a great presentation on some of the preliminary data products we're getting out of that activity. Two other projects we're just starting, where I'll go in a couple of weeks to visit these places, are Mekelle, Ethiopia, where we're looking at water accessibility because Ethiopia is experiencing one of the most profound droughts that they've ever had. And then Denpasar, Indonesia, where we're looking at oceanic waste management. So our project in Cuzco, Peru was our pilot project, and we started that last summer, which EcoCity Builders is now following on from that initial activity that we did there. We can see that we've got the various districts of Cuzco, which make this a really challenging project because Cuzco is not one city, it's actually 5 different cities within this one location. So how do we integrate and collect data when we have to deal with 5 different mayors and all the different infrastructure that's in place differentially across that particular city? You can see that we also have a satellite imagery that we're being able to utilize for this. That allows us to, again, do some fine spatial analysis and collecting data. We've been collecting data on neighborhoods, local place names, things that are not traditionally in a database. And then we had the participants do sketch mapping to be able to see what are the critical issues there, what are the types of things they want to map, and how might we start to integrate that into the mapping process. And there's a whole procedure where we do transect walks, GPS points, and rubber sheet, essentially, these sketch maps into our database. In Medellin, Colombia, we're just kicking that off. Kirsten's team will be there next week, launching one of our workshops. In fact, right now, a workshop is going on in Cuzco to further along the data collection process. And in Medellin, Colombia, some of the background work we've done there is we've looked at doing a change detection analysis. In fact, we've done a change detection analysis using Landsat imagery for all of the different cities that we're working in. This is something my students in my GIS graduate class do at CSU. And then we provide these results to our partners to see if this might help with identifying where we need to map. If indeed these are areas where we've had urban growth and this is a location where we can do some mapping. In Pokhara, Nepal, what we have here is building off of activities that were initiated by the World Bank there and following the earthquake that happened in April 25th. We're working with Kathmandu Living Labs to be able to map things for disaster management. And as we scroll down in here, we can see that they've created a Prepare Pokhara GeoNode, their website, and all where they're starting to post their data and organize the results of their mapping activities. I'll be going there in a couple of weeks to do another workshop with them and to identify some metadata protocols that we need to work on. And so the graph here on the left just shows the number of statistics by month that they've been able to map. In Kharkiv, Ukraine, again, Esri demonstrated some of these results from yesterday. What we see here is, I'm trying to remember what we were going to show from this one. Oh, that's right. Some of the results that we see here from accessibility and handicapped accessibility have to do with looking at points that have been collected out in the field by our team members there and putting together this kind of a map where we have handicap accessibility, we have the attribute table, and we have a photo that's associated with this. So collecting this kind of information. And then just to wrap up, we've done a number of these workshops, and we want to make sure that the data is available. We've been working with GeoNode and with ArcGIS Online to post these data and make them accessible. And so you can see here that we've got a number of different data that's sitting there that people can go in, download if they need that. And we've been working on the metadata protocols. And I think that's the overview for secondary cities. So We're going to obviously be around all day. If anybody has any other questions about these, I'm happy to answer them. And we're looking forward to launching these projects, continue to work on these projects throughout the year. So with that, I want to shift this over, and I want to introduce Dr. Lee Schwartz, who is the geographer of the United States. He's been in that, he's like the 8th geographer that's held that position. He's in the Department of Global and
Office of Geography and Global Issues?
Yeah, I'll just let you say that. So with that, I'm just going to introduce Lee and have him give his talk. So thank you.